together we can move towards leadership positions. We can encourage each other. Land needs you, women and men. Somaliland must not be deprived. I don't know whether my 5 minutes are over or not. I know there must be. I talk too much because I love you.
And she has worked so hard and is very successful in Ghana and outside of Ghana. Successful.
I failed miserably, so I'll begin with an apology. Please forgive me. I will do better when I come to speak tomorrow. First of all, I just want to pay tribute to this amazing woman leader sitting to my right. It is deeply inspiring to be invited to even sit beside these women. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your love and thank you for your compassion. I am Ghanaian and I'm with the Ghana delegation. And what I want to talk about is the power of each individual woman to be a leader in her life and to define for herself what success is and what it is not. I am a soul, was a very educated man. He went to the best schools and the best universities. He served in Ghana's first government, the government of Kwame Nkrumah. And so, because of the way we think about education, society taught me that it was my father's lesson that I should follow in terms of becoming educated. That changed, though, in February 1966. That was Ghana's first military coup. And for years, I had listened to my father, who was a politician, he was a lawyer, he was a man of letters, he loved to write and he loved to read. My mother was raised in the villages outside of Kumasi in a place called Akumadan, and she's of the Ashanti tribe. And my father and all of his colleagues had long told the story. Day in 1997, when I was sitting in the kitchen in my parents' home in Accra, in Ghana's capital. And my mother was getting ready fried plantain. Fried plantain is this delicious, one of my favorite foods that I eat literally every single day. It's become similar to Somali tea, which I must also take every day. And she was peeling the plantain, and my father and his friends were reminiscing about the coup of 1966, and they were telling the stories of the policy and the politics of that time. And I said to my mother, you know, I've never asked you, when the coup happened, where were you? Where were you? And my mother was peeling the plantain and she just smiled. And I said to her again, Ma, where were you? And then my mother told me a story I had never heard. It was wild to realize that they were tanks rolling up to the homes of many politicians, many people. Soldiers with guns broke down the door and smashed every window in our house. They were terrorizing not just my mother, but the women and the wives of so many of the men who were not actually in the country at the time of the coup. They had traveled on a peace mission to Vietnam. So they were not there. They were not in, and the guns and the tanks showed up, ready to shed blood and take life. But my mother was there. A soldier put a gun to my mother's head and told her she was going to lose her life that night. Somehow, my mother refused to share these details. Somehow she got herself and her daughters out of the house. Women went from door to their neighbors, pulling women and children out of homes and out of the clutches of men with guns who killed and maimed and raped that night. The reason that story matters to me is it taught me that in journalism, we have what I call told stories. There is the story of political development, political leadership told by my father, but we have untold stories. And those untold stories, the stories like those of my mother, and how she fought that night with so many hundreds of other women to free people from that war, that horror. Those untold stories shaped nations. What it taught me was that we have always needed more than one type of leadership for any nation to flourish. If you only have one kind, you will move but so far. And there is an Akan proverb, it's an African proverb that says, if you want to move fast, move alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So what that should teach us as a nation is that no nation can move as far as it wants to if an entire gender is absent. So Somaliland, like Ghana, like any nation, can move as far as it engages the women of its nation to move. Because side by side, you have the possibility of creating something phenomenal. But alone, you can do but so much. Not that you can't do, but you can do but so much. Women are not invincible, but we are incredible. And we need to be willing to teach each other that fact. The day my mother told me that story of the night of the 1966 coup, that was in 1997, I became a different journalist. And I have been a different journalist as a result of that single story. It revealed to me the power of a woman and a story and a moment to change an entire life. So for every woman in here, I wonder, what is your untold story that can reimagine your life, change your world, and potentially the worlds of the other women and men and children around you? The importance of recognizing how women change journeys and change our journeys is that there is a power in recognizing we come into the world as a result of two people. It takes a man and a woman to make a build a nation also takes both. We will never, and we have never moved as fast as we would like to move when you leave an entire gender behind, irrespective of the field in which they sit. So for me as a media practitioner, I'm looking around at who is taking information about our stories, and I see these wonderful young men behind the cameras and these wonderful young men behind the laptops. And I want to know, where are my women storytellers? Where are the women journalists? I want to meet Somaliland's women journalists. I want to hear your take on these discussions and your lens and your narrative. Why? Because the power of the media is not that we tell stories or that we convey information, but it's how we do it. Why do I know that? Because my father told me the story of the politics of a country in 1966. But when my mother told me the story of that same night through and her narrative, it changed my entire profession. Do you see what I'm saying? The power of two people, one event, a different frame, a different narrative, and a life is changed. Whose lives would you change if we could just hear your story? How different could Somaliland be if we could just hear your story? And by hearing your story, leadership has never been the work of women or men on microphones and building buildings. That has never been just what leadership is. And society deceives women into believing that unless you run a country, you do not perform leadership. Women run worlds. We are leaders. Somaliland seeks recognition from the international community to be a nation. Women are a nation unto themselves, and they build nations when they stand up together side by side with men in the push and pull of the motion of their own vision. You build because you say, I matter. you recognize yourself first and foremost. That's why I talked about the power of social media to connect. If the people recognize you, if you recognize you, if you look in the mirror as a young Somali woman, as an elder, and recognize yourself, who dares say that I don't recognize you? I now look at my mother. My mother taught me what leadership is. The entire journey of my journalism changed the day I learned that story. And when I was with the BBC in London for almost 10 years, the BBC is one of the most revered broadcasters. When I went back to London, we would have these sessions, they're called pitching sessions, where you would pitch ideas to tell stories. And I was covering Africa. We were in Ghana and Kenya and Nigeria and South Africa and Lesotho. And I said, I want to tell the story of the February 1966 coup, but we want to tell the story through the voices of women and what happened to them that night, where they were, what they did. Why? Because it is as an important part of Ghana's history as the history of Kwame Nkrumah, which is the told story. So many African leaders recognize the power of a Kwame Nkrumah and raise his name as the father of Pan-Africanism. There were mothers of Pan-Africanism too. It could not grow without the women, because you do not grow without women. There's nowhere for you to go without us. And we make it more fun. We make it more fly. So I say all of that to say that I am somebody who is deeply passionate about media. I am, because of my mother, I learned that media is power. When I first went to become a radio host, and I was offered a job as a co-host. So the man was going to be the host, and I was going to be the co-host. And again, went home. This time we were in London. Went home, told my mother, I'm going to become a co-host. Everybody was excited. It's the BBC. My father celebrated. It was an exciting moment. It was my mother who said to me, what is a co-host? Do you know, I had never asked the question myself. I said, well, what do you mean, what is a co-host? She said, what does a co-host do? So I explained that I would, that there is a man who's the host and I'm the co-host. And my mother said to me, and she was teaching me how to better make, there is a chicken dish in my family that we would have on regular weekday evenings. And my mother and I would always argue about who seasons the chicken better. And I learned that my mother offered me leadership lessons often when we were in the kitchen cooking. And part of the power of women is that we understand that leadership occurs in many different environments. And if you are not sitting around a book to Washington, lessons from my mother, and that's why I tell these stories, because she taught me this. My father wanted me to be educated, but my mother wanted me to leave garlic, the onions. I add the tomatoes. My mother doesn't like the tomatoes. We are discussing the tomatoes. My mother is asking me about this co-host position. So I explained that this is what I do. There's a man who's a host and I will co-host. And my mother says to me, why is the man not the co-host too? And I had never even thought about the question. And I had no answer. And my mother said to me, I want you to go back to your editor and ask them. I want you to come and tell me the answer. Went back to my office, had a wonderful editor, and I said, it's interesting. My mother asked me what a co-host is and why men aren't co-hosts. So I figured I would come and ask you. And she was quiet as well, and she said, women have always been co-hosts. I said, really? Went home, said to my mother, do you know women have always been co-hosts? My mother said to me, maybe it's not your job to sit beside a man and make him look good. Maybe that's not a job. Maybe. My mother said to me, we continued to argue about the tomatoes. I like slices of tomatoes on my chicken. She doesn't like the slices of the tomatoes. She said to me, what do you want to do? I said, I want to have my own show. I want to create a production company. I want to be able to do global radio shows that go out all over the world. and talk to people about different issues, but I want to do that as a Ghanaian woman. And my mother said to me, as she told me to remove the tomatoes from her chicken, she said to me, if you want to lead, lead. And I was quiet, and I said, but I don't have the same experience that they do. And my mother said, and who do you think taught them that experience? I am a journalist. I have a radio show. My radio show is international. I am Ghanaian. It is produced in Accra. It goes out to Nigeria. It goes out all across the United States of America. It is an all-women round table, and we discuss issues of policy and politics and social justice issues, and we go out all over the world. I do those things because my mother taught me what leadership looks like. That's why I do them. So I just close by saying to this, and I'm so sad that I'm not able to communicate in an African language that you can understand. If I could know the name of every single woman in this hall, I would ask you, what is it that you want to do? Because I believe in my heart that you are supposed to lead in some capacity in your life. You simply have to discover what it is and do that in support of a community, because we always, always, always go further when we move together. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was absolutely phenomenal. We are really, really privileged to be here to hear you speak, and I hope that your radio show will include a segment on Somaliland women at some point. We do have some female leaders, I'm hoping, so don't disappoint. Lastly but not least, we also have with us Suad Armiya, who amongst many things has come back from the UK to Somaliland to open and successfully run a restaurant, Lale's, which many of us go and love. Suad was the chair of the Somaliland Society UK and the Anglo-Somali Society, and she continues her activism for Somaliland here as well, both locally and internationally. Suad has helped to establish the Association for Women in Business here in Hargeysa, and she'll be sharing with us some of the specific problems and opportunities for women in business in Somaliland. Suad, welcome.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. After Adna and Esther, what more to say? To be honest, I'm very proud and honored to be a member of this panelist. And also would like to say thank you to Jama and Ayan and their team who made it possible for us to come together and to learn from each other. This book fair has become something everybody looks forward to every year, and it's all in our calendar. And we would like to thank Chama and Ayan and their team who make this idea possible. After that, I would talk in Somali, because it seems that we have been speaking English all through since yesterday, but I will summarize what I said in Somali in English for those who doesn't speak Somali. Assalamu alaikum. Waxaan ka hadlaynaa waxa weeyaan hogaamin iyo dumarku sidee u hogaamin lahaayeen iyo hogaanku wuxuu yahay qualitieska uu lahaan lahaa hogaan. Marka leader laga hadlayo or leadership laga hadlayo, marka aynu eegno kelmadda Soomaaliyeed ee u dhiganta leadership waa hogaamiye oo muscular ah. Taas waxay sheegaysaa hogaamiye inuu qof nina yahay oonay qof dumar ahayn. Marka horta to be marka ugu horeysaba talaabada ugu horeysa hogaamiye markay tahay af Soomaaligeena uu yahay waxa in laynaga dhigay inaynan ahayn dad wax hogaamin kara. Waxa aynu ognahay dhammaanteen dumarka Soomaaliyeed ama af Soomaaliga ku hadla ama reer Somaliland ba ah in aynu kulligeen hogaaminimada ama hogaanka ka bilownay inagoo 5 jira oo aan inagu cusbeen. Marka aad eegto aad yar tahay aad hooyada ag joogto miftaaxa hooyada aday kugu aamintaa walaalkaa kuma aaminto walaalkaa adiga oo 6 jir ama 7 jir isagu waa a childhoodkii ayuu enjoy gareeyaa dibaddu ku ciyaaraa kubad buu ciyaaraa laakiin waxaa laga yaabaa ama dhacdaba inta badan marka reeraha maartay dabaqaadka marka la eego inteena badan marka la eego inanta yar ee 6 jirka ah waxa laga doonaa adeeg in hooyadeedu adeegto waxa laga yaabaa 2 jirkii ama kii guga jiray inay daryeelayso inay hayso oo mas'uuliyadaas dhakada laga saaray iyada oo 7 jira markuu 7 jirkii iyada la midka ahaa wiilka ahaa uu suuq u ciyaaray ama shaag eryanayo ama kubad ku ciyaarayo ama geed korayo ama laaxa ku ciyaarayo sidaasay ku wadaa inantu Soomaaliyeed ku noqotaa muxuu ahaa 16 jir by the time you are 16 hogaamiye runa tahay reerka dhan sidoo dhan iyo hooyada way kaaga tagi kartaa inta holiday tagto kaligaa baa rangarayn kara walaalkaaga 16 jirkii kuwa waska joogana game buu ciyaaraya TV buu wataa kuwa halkan joogana ma waa la mid ama muxuu ahaayay waxay enjoy gareynayaan teenage life koodi haddaba waxyaabaha ayaan darada waxa weeyaan maalinta aad ama 30 iyo wax la jira tahay ama 40 jir tahay ee aad hogaamin karto nation dhan because waxaad ka yar yahay badan tahay inaad ka xirfad badan tahay inaad laakiin waxyaabaha ugu weyn ee dumarka hortaagan in ay noqdaan leaders ama iyaga oo leadership qualities kala sheego oo dhan ee kamid ah inay yihiin trustworthy inay yihiin visionary inay yihiin muxuu ahaayay ya marka horta hogaaminta number 1 inagu inaynu is ixtiraafno dumar ahaan weeyaan oo aynu isu sheegno in aynu nation hogaamin karno qoom hogaamin karno ya diintu ma ogola wadan islaamad muxuu ahaayay dumarku ma liid gareyn karaan hadda weligii muu tukan hadduu dana weligii muu soomin markaasuu noqdaa radical uu dadna seefta la soo baxa waxaynu ognahay inay jiraan wadamo islaama oo dumarka hoggaan ay ka noqdeen oo wax hogaamin karaan marka horta marka ugu horeysa dumarka waxa loo baahan yahay dumarka reer Somaliland kuwa meel kasto ay joogeen af Soomaaliga ku hadlo oo dhan waxa loo baahan yahay horta iyaguna naftooda ictiraafaan inay ogaadaan hoggaannimada inay ka bilaabeen iyaga oo 7 jira oo reerkoodii ay ka bilaabeen oo reeraha maanta jira dadka maanta backbones-ka waa lacagta maanta la soo diro dadka soo dira dadka wadanka aan aragtay sida u dhisay waxa qayb weyn waxaan oran karaa 80% ka qaatay waa dumar lacagta marka la eego dahabshil la soo dhigo waxa soo dira waa dumar project haday noqoto waa dumar laakiin waxyaabaha inaga dhima waxa weeyaan in inagu isu aqoonsano inaynu hoggaannahay ee wadanka goodi in aanay soo baxayn waxa la sameeyay hay-ado ay ka mid yihiin Sonyo waxyaabahaas oo dhan oo muxuu ahaa NGO-yo lagu magacaabo dhalinyaro laakiin dhalinyaro marka laga hadlayo waxa laga hadlayaa boys hablo kuma jiraan waxa laga hadlaa football-kooda miyaad aragteen meel loo qoondeeyay gabdhuhu inay football ku ciyaaraan ama ay kubad ku ciyaaraan maya waxa ka hadlaan waxay yiraahdeen waxaan doonaynaa qaybtii dhalinyarada lagama siinin dawladda inay wax ka noqdaan dumarka hablaha dhalinyaradii maba weydiiyaan su'aalahaas baan siris maba weydiiyaan anu ma garanayo sababta waayo waxay ku faanaan NGO-yada ay Soonya ka mid tahay waxay ku faanaan in dhalinyaro agaasimayaal laga dhigay dawladda maanta jirta laakiin weligood ma yiraahdaan intaas hablaha intaas inama waa wada inamo waxa laali waxa la qaato waa inamo ayaan dhaweetole waxa dhacday nin madax ah kala kuma fiicna waa inay isku dhex kariyaan good waa fiican tahay inaan isku dhex karino laakiin dise waxaan u soo jeedin lahaa hablaha reer Somaliland bal maalin inta in wax walba dhigno oo aynu iska dayno shaqada oo aad iska dayso hadda shaah karinsi shaahad karinaysay oo aad iska daysay lacagta walaalka u soo dirisay joojisa bisha aynu raahno waa maalintii isku dhex karska ya oo aynu isku dhex karska karino deena aynu ku eegno in quraato shilin u soo dirayay jirin waxaan hubaa telefoonana hadirina because inta badan kuwa telesom customerskeeda ugu badan waa dumar haddana shaqaalaheeda waxa ugu yar waa dumar marka la eego private sector-ka marka la eego dahabshiil shaqaalahoodu waa rag inta badan dumarku waa very few baankooda waxa laba hablood baa fadhiya tilka waxyaabahaas ayay tahay inaynu inagu ka dhidhino waayo hoggaannimo haddaynu ay doonayno waa inaynu awareness uu jiraa meelaha aynu dib uga dhacsannahay waxaan doonayaa markaa inaan u soo noqdo calqadaha hortaagan dumarka businesska ku jira waxaanu leenahay association la yidhaahdo association aanu horumar badan sameyn oo ka duwan familiga biilka uga soo saarno mida in ku jira la xiriira inay xog helaan xog in aanay helin xogtu ay ku wareegto ragga dhexdooda meelaha ay fundkii oo kale waxyaabaha ay keenaan ay yidhaahdaan foomamka yidhaahdeen soo buuxiya in ay dumarkii keena aynu
you to just is it successful to
Very short? Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the attendees and Edna and all the others who are up on the table. I'm sorry I just walked in. But, and Capital to build their own industry at all. And that is one thing that we need to face head on. And until that day where people can really concentrate and unite in addressing that simple situation, which is supervising and regulating our successful Somaliland. Thank you.
inta la isu yimaado la yada sidaynu doonaynaa inaynu waynu burburay waxaynu wadaynu haysanay belaayo dhan
that with talents of public relations, a scholar who had experienced the injustices of apartheid in his native country, South Africa, none of whatever achievements have been made by Somaliland in the international platforms would have been achieved without his contribution, without his negotiation. And as a Somalilander, I say, on behalf of all of us, I say thank you to Professor Iqbal Jaspai. We often had no salary for him. We were not paying his rent. We did not give him a car. We gave him nothing but headaches. But from his home, and with his small blue car that I have often been given a lift on, we had access to the ANC, to universities in South Africa, to the Foreign Office in South Africa, to the presidency and the advisors of the president at that time, Tambo, Mbeki. If we had Somaliland representatives around the world who were doing the PR that Professor Iqbal was doing, we would have had access to the ears of so many more. Today, Minister Saad is the 12th minister that Somaliland has had. It's someone who has a track record of being a very honest and a very dedicated and a very good man. I don't think he will leave any stone that he can turn unturned. But he needs every single one of you, 4 million Somalilanders, whether you're living in Norway or Sweden or Canada or America or wherever you are around the world, you must become the Iqbals that he can count on. You must do the PR, the public relations, wherever you are. You must sell the idea that Somaliland wishes to share with the rest of the world the message that Somalilanders are peaceful, are democratic, and have a right to their rightful identity, and have a right to be living in the land that they have lived on for hundreds of years and generations. Without the ambassadors, no minister can function. Without public relations, through the parliaments of the countries that you have adopted as your countries of residence, without your contacts with members of parliaments and mayors, without your contacts with the community leaders in those countries where you are residing, no Saad Sheikh Noor will succeed. We need you, the plural you. We need the friends of Somaliland. We need the likes of you who are sincerely convinced about the identity and the needs of Somaliland to give us support. If I may go to the country that this lady comes from, Ghana, the Gold Coast. I remember as a student in England, I remember the Sundays in Hyde Park. I remember the speakers' corners. I remember Kwame Nkrumah, who was a student in England and who was a friend and an inspiration to our late President Mohammed Ibrahim Igal, who idolized Ibrahim Igal in the Congo, in Kenya. I remember the platforms criticizing the hardships that were being inflicted on the people of Kenya because of the Mau Mau. The Jomo Kenyattas, the Julius Nyereres, the Kwame Nkrumahs, these were the African leaders who inspired our politicians to also seek independence from Britain in Somaliland. And they were the ones who inspired us that together we can be strong, that together we can start that ambition for a Pan-African Union one day, the predecessor of the African Union today. So Ghana has played a very great influence in the lives of our people in Somaliland through our late President Mohammed Ibrahim Igal. But the war, the victory has not been won yet. Many obstacles have been removed that were there 20 years or 25 years ago. But we need to continue moving forward in the direction that we need to move forward in, forward peacefully, democratically, and fairly for all our citizens, whether they're men or women. We need each other. I remember, I'll tell you a joke about when I was minister. I'm one of those people who are very, you know, if there's an appointment, I like to be there on time. If there's an assignment, I want to do it. And I was told when I was minister that on Mondays is the Council of Ministers. Okay. What time? At 10 o'clock. Good. It means 5 minutes to 10. So I presented myself in the cabinet on Monday at 5 minutes to 10. And there were seats. It's a conference table, and there was a chair that was bigger than the others, so I knew that that was not going to be my chair. And I pulled up a chair, the closest to the door, and I just sat down. There were no names, nothing to identify, distinguish one chair from the other, from the others. And I sat down, and it was 10, it was 5 past 10, and it was 10 past 10. So I went out to the secretary and said, by the way, has the meeting been cancelled? And he said, no, it's at 10 o'clock. I said, yeah, but 10 o'clock was 15 minutes ago. He said, no, it's okay, they will come. So I went back and I sat there, and then the first minister came and said, hey, Wazir, since when are you the Minister of Defense? She said, I'm not. Well, you're sitting in a seat. Oh, sorry. Then I sat in the next one. Oh, that's the Minister of Education. I sat in the, oh, that's the Minister of Finance. How do you know? He said, that's where they always sit. Okay. So I stood up. Because, and he said, that's the Minister of Planning, that's the Minister of Agriculture, that's the Minister. Okay. So I remained standing. The President comes in, and everybody, those who were sitting down, stand up. The President sits down, they sit down. All the seats are taken. And I remain standing. Wazir, please, take a seat. I said, yeah, but where? All the seats are taken. Oh, there's no chair for the Minister of Social Affairs. Ding, ding, bring a chair. So they brought a chair to the cabinet. And they said, Wazir, حقا الطرق. What do you حقا الطرق? So they put me on that corner. Okay. We didn't think you would be coming. They just assumed that this had been a meeting of ministers, of male ministers, and this female freak was not going to be there. They just assumed it. So anyway, I sat there. The minister on my right lit up a cigarette. The minister to my left, lit up a cigarette. The smoke of 2 cigarettes were coming in my face. So I stood up again. Wazir, what's the problem? Sit down. I said, well, if I want to smoke a cigarette, I will choose my own brand, and I'll smoke one at a time, not together. So they said, well, we can't, we smoke. So I said, well, I'm sorry, I would rather remain standing. Then a few others said, no, we also don't like cigarette smoke. How many of you do not like to smoke? 1 or 2. We became 4 on cigar كعبن. 4 of us were the ones who did not smoke. So it happened that, okay, you non-smokers move together and move there. So they take their books and you move there. The entire session was taken up, sorting out the smokers from the non-smokers. And it was seen not as a problem-solving exercise, but as the interference of a woman. Forget about the harm of tobacco to their lungs. Forget about the fact that they shouldn't be smoking in people's faces. Forget about the fact that it is not right to be smoking in a government cabinet. But it was seen as the interference and the intrusion of a woman in the sanctity of the cabinet, of the ministers of the government. So we need to re-educate ourselves. because that is the ministries that I inherited, that I became a member of. And when I refused to, when I insisted that I would be part of the cabinet and I would be part of the decision making, whether it's about health or economy or defense, and about the issues that governments need to discuss, when I voiced an opinion, it was seen, since when did women know something about this? Women know about this because they are part of the society and it affects them. So, sir, women have a lot of goodwill. We're on the same boat. And that boat is leaking. It's been leaking for 25 years. And if we need that boat to float and to protect and lead us and move us towards where we wish to go, every little leaking plug has to be plugged, whether it's by a woman or by a man. Because if we drown, you will drown with us as well. And if you make us drown, we won't allow you to make us drown. We will stand up for our rights and we will continue to plug those little holes that may lead us towards drowning. So let us use our energies together. Don't let us waste our energy towards what she's doing wrong and what she could be doing different. Come up with good ideas that will make us move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edna Aden and the rest of the panelists. We've learned so much and it's been so educational. Some of the most important things, it took Edna 64 years to build her dream hospital and run it. So for some of the younger girls, you don't want to be too rushed, too arrogant, too impatient, and therefore easily defeated and discouraged by all the negativity. And we also learned from these great women that we need to stop asking for permission, that they didn't get anything given, that they took and they created their own space. So all the girls here, please go ahead, take what you need, stop asking for permission and to be given stuff. I think this concludes our panel on women and leadership. Please give a huge round of applause for our female panelists. Thank you very much. I want to make 2 announcements. The first is about social media, which Esther has been talking about. HIBF 2016 is trending. Please use it. The second thing, the program for today, I know you're all hungry. Thank you so much for the audience for staying with us. I know we run over the time. At 4 o'clock, we have the children's panel. At 5 o'clock, we have the great Beverly doing poetry. At 6 o'clock, we have the publishing industry in Somaliland. We then have the book launches in Somali. At 7:30, we have Musa Galal, the book launch and a panel discussion. And then from 8:30 to 9 o'clock, we have the traditional regional dances. I hope you will all get some rest and come back to spend the evening with us. Thank you very much for staying with us.